Basically, we heard one opinion there in favour of some kind of platform, but what about you? Do you think there should be a platform for policy exchange?
First, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here today with you, and my apologies because of the delay, but at the same time, we are in the ITRE committee in the Parliament, that is exactly today, and I had to attend some of the points, so I couldn't be here exactly in the beginning, but I think that I catch most of it. So, what is my position in it? I think that's very important to have foundations involved, because we really need to increase the overall budget that is devoted to science and innovation. And when I say the overall, I mean public, private, philanthropy, member states. So the full amount that is devoted to knowledge has to drastically increase in Europe. And it's good that there is some collaboration. I'm not so afraid of repetitions, or it's not a problem, but there is already some complementarity or some synergies between, or joint efforts. And we have some good experience. I'm quite fortunate because I follow some of the good experience in the past. I wanted to talk about one example, that is the EDCTP. Is a public partnership for AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis in Africa, that puts together European countries with 16 African countries, and is financed by EU budget and EU budget and member states budget, and was one of the first examples when, for example, Gates Foundation joint efforts in the time yet of the Commissioner Gagan Quinn, and already now after with the Commissioner Moedas we had the example that Gulbenkian Foundation also joined the efforts of this. And this worked very well. Of course, there are we need to. I follow closely the two examples, and it's not so simple. There are still things that should be make simpler for having these joint efforts in European projects to join. And this is very important, that we remove the barriers, that things become simpler when we want to join efforts to a certain project or to work together. And this is essential. To work together, remove barriers. So if for that a platform helps, nothing against. What I wouldn't like is to have yet another heavy structure where you spend most of your effort in the structure itself, in the governance of the structure, and the structure tends to put more rules, and the rules sometimes are barriers. So I want to make things simpler for this collaboration. Of course, a forum or platform for people to meet, to exchange, to exchange good practices, and some sort of very flexible and very light way of promoting this collaboration. I'm in favor. Not if it's a heavy structure. I don't think that in Europe we have. We need heavy structure. We need science. We need more fund for science. And if we deviate money for structures, is less money for science.
Okay, so fair enough. You don't want to. You want to have a policy dialogue and exchange, but you want to remove the barriers.
Can be a platform, but not a very heavy structure.
Okay, so that's interesting. That's interesting. So Maria de Gracia, just hearing that list of ideas where areas are up for specific policy discussion, How do you feel about that? Are you comfortable with that the foundations are influencing the policy creation?
I think that there are areas where we have a lot to gain to collaborate with the foundations. And I would divide in two parts. One, the more horizontal issues, policy issues, and I could give as example research integrity. They do quite a lot of work, open science, so subjects of this kind. The second is more vertical issues that we have more difficult from the public sector to collaborate with the private sector because of the nature of the subject. And I'm thinking, for example, on the health, the global health, as I said, like the poverty-related diseases that you have sometimes, is changing, but sometimes you don't have so much the interest of the private sector, and you have foundations very active. And things like the rare diseases that you really do not have a lot of interest from the big farmer on this, because the market is small, and you can have also the collaboration with foundations. There is another area that foundations are very, very active, and it was mentioned already by someone in the room, that is a social innovation. We have done, and Jean-David, you were there, we have done, I was in the commission at that time, a fantastic conference on social innovation with the collaboration with many foundations, and we really could see small startups, small groups, a lot of them funded by foundations that were doing social innovation projects. We are also now, from the public side, also financing, but social innovation more and more. Jean-David can talk about that. But we would have a lot to learn with the collaboration with foundations on these areas of the social issue. There are more, but I will stand these two vertical areas and some of horizontal areas.
Okay, thank you. So social innovation and plugging the gaps in areas which perhaps are a bit risky for investment, or there's no money to be made, so they don't get much traction.
They are so important to the population and to be developed, like the health issues that I mentioned. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So there's a obvious benefit there that the Commission can learn from foundations, but as we heard from the other two questions, that just illustrated the point about the diversity of foundations, and very mission-specific, one on rare diseases, one about diabetes. I'm just imagining this table and all these different voices. When is the first meeting? Who's going to be sitting around it? I'd like to know. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I'll start with you.
Can I comment on the
Maria,
questions?
Yeah.
Not on this, but on the questions.
Okay.
On the rare diseases, I had the opportunity to be the rapporteur of Horizon 2020, and I include rare diseases as one of the top priorities. And at the time I visited and I had meetings with a lot of groups that did research, but also foundations, and they do an incredible work of assistance to the patients, to the families. They combine with research, they combine with small hospitals or clinics. It's really a fantastic work. And we have already in the Commission a Rare Disease Alliance for Research and the Global Alliance on Rare Disease. So it's a very interesting example where foundations could be included straight away, and there is a win-win situation. There is another advantage on foundations that is related with the last speaker, that is the simplification and the fact that foundations can do things that sometimes are difficult for the Commission. I'm for example, talking again about the EDCTP, the AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, I visited some of the projects in Africa with the Commissioner Gallagher Quinn, and they were doing their work, both research and attending the population that had AIDS and the TB in terrible conditions, not even a house they had. They were in improvised, in shanty towns in the middle, and because they could not spend the money of the project in the infrastructure, building a clinic, because they are bound to these rules of participation and the financial rules that you don't build infrastructures, and if you are together with the foundation can provide what the Commission, if we keep the same rules from the framework program, cannot pay. So it's very complementary and very important for this kind of projects. Your questions I leave to...
Well, perhaps you'd like, perhaps as you've got the microphone, you might have an idea about,
I think Jean-David have a start because he's going to lead the project, so he should say when you want to meet.
Who should we put on the spot?
Who should meet?
Okay. What do you think the next step should be, Maria?
I think that is goodwill from both parts. There is a lot to be done, so is implementation. So Jean-David and your team, you have a lot of work to to call everyone and to sit everyone at the same table at the forum, as you call it, at the EIC forum, and I think that is just do it. Now it's just work.
Yes, but I know I can count on your support.
Yes, yes.